write out a problem and to see how you're going to deal with it. It can be anything from your generator is in op, run through the process. Well, that's real easy, right? We put it in the logbook, we MEL the generator, try to get it fixed, probably MEL it, see if we can operate. That's checking the manual set. That's checking to see if you go through the proper processes that are in your manuals to get to the right solution. It could be you're getting hijacked. What are you going to do? We got that scenario card right over Denver, 36,000 feet. To you lost an engine, got that one on the ETOPS proving runs years later, of course, when we did that. That was the lead pilot on that one.
Rob Bendall was the lead certification pilot for the launch of Virgin America. Along with certification, Rob has had a role in most things involving the pilots of Virgin America. Hiring, checking, training, and otherwise supporting the pilots. He has acted as certification pilot, check airman, base chief pilot, and system chief pilot. In this interview, we talk about what it took to launch the airline from a pilot's perspective and the many other aspects of the airline. Rob's integrity is something that I've always admired. I hope you enjoy this conversation. All right. I've got Rob Bendall. He was one of the lead certification pilots of Virgin America, who also was a system chief pilot eventually at Virgin America here. Thanks so much for joining me, Rob.
No problem, Scott. Thanks for having me, man. It's good to see you.
Yeah. So what about the certification of Virgin America was different and unique at the time, and what was your role in it specifically?
I was one of the first 4 pilots hired at Virgin. We were all part of the certification team. 2 of us did the bulk of the work. A good friend, Rich Dancaster, was with me. We did all the normal certification stuff under a new FAA certification process with the CSET team from the FAA. A big regulatory oversight jump from previous ways of doing business, including electronic flight bags and stuff that we take for granted now because everybody's been brought up to that standard. But it was pretty new back in 05, 06 when we were doing this. And eventually doing the proving runs in 2006 December with the FAA. So first of 4 there, and Rich and I did the all 50 hours of the proving runs. I think he missed 1 flight. I was on all of them. And proving runs, especially with a high-profile brand like Virgin, and we were kind of making waves back in the beginning when we started because we had a great brand. I mean, we had Inflight in the entertainment at every seat when most airlines were pulling them out. You probably remember, Scott. You've been in the business for a long time. 2005, and that time frame was kind of a bad time in aviation. I think one quote was the legacy carriers in the United States were polling below the IRS in popularity at the time, and that's pretty hard to do. That's upsetting a lot of people. So here comes Virgin with a great brand name, an awesome cabin product with mood lighting and young, happy people and great in-flight teams. And so anyway, we were pretty high profile going into these new way of doing business with the FAA. The proving runs were very, very thorough, to say the least. But the airline was ready, and we were the first airline in U.S. history to actually launch with Class 2 EFBs up front, which was a trick in itself. A lot of airlines were unable to pull that off as well. And I was actually a little hesitant to do that because we had enough scrutiny during these certification times to get it done with all the new stuff and with the high-profile nature of the brand. And then to throw that in there where others had failed and some pretty big names were involved in those failures, for whatever reason, I don't know why, but the FAA seemed to have heartburn with EFBs as opposed to paper documents, and that almost seems laughable now. But I guess like anything new, it's different. So kind of a long answer, but part of the certification team with Virgin.
Great, and to add on to the EFB thing, for those who aren't aware of the timing or the timeline, this was well before the iPad was even invented. The Class 2 EFBs were they were hardwired. They had a
ship's power, hardwired in. As a matter of fact, the battery. That was a funny story. one of the FA scenarios was, well, what if the aircraft lost power? Otherwise something, then we have to go, well, we'd have backup power that would last 3 minutes after, or 3 hours after the main battery went dead. How's that? So it was kind of funny with some of the scenarios, but it's just a new thing. But yeah, electronic flight bag class 2, there's class 3 now, which are even more advanced. And then there's iPads, which still surprises me that it's certified. It sure wasn't going to be back in the day, because an iPad's just off the shelf product, really not TSO'd by the FAA per se. I guess they have now, but and no ship's power in some situations. So, but a little surprising that they went that loose with it, but that was much later.
Yeah, for the most part, those TPAD class 2 AFBs work pretty well, but I do remember the pesky little calibration issues that would happen sometime, where you'd hit the mouse and you'd have to hit it a 1/4 inch up and to the right of where you actually wanted it to click and whatnot. Were those Windows based operating systems? Do you remember?
So just to take a step back, we ended up with those. That's not the one I would have chosen when I was as system chief pilot. But we ended up with those. So there was a whole lot better devices, more like an iPad, but would be part of ships power. And as you can remember, we didn't have to update anything. That was all done by maintenance. So it wasn't the pilot's responsibility other than to check that the document had been updated, but not to do it either. So that was all good stuff with the class 2 or 3 devices.
Okay.
But that one that we ended up with, Scott, was just like a lot of things, somebody's choice for whatever reason, but not the best choice and not a good example of a class 2 device.
So what date were you hired by Virgin America?
Let's see, April of 2006.
Who interviewed you?
Bob Weatherly. I talked with Bob Dana, who was our CFO, brilliant guy, good friend to this day. Joe Houghton, and let's see, and HR. I think Christine Moorhead was in there.
Okay, I remember Christine.
She's great as well.
So, what made you the guy? What skill sets did you have? What previous experience did you have that made you the right guy to be one of the certification pilots?
Yeah, no, great question. It was a great honor to be chosen to do this project. I suspect that it was my previous check airman at multiple airlines, lots of international check airman work. And I was also a test pilot certification guy with a company called International Flight Test Group, IFTG, which was a branch of ILFC, International Lease Finance Corp. At the time, it was the biggest leasing company in the world, 1,000 airplanes all over the world. We were their lift, if you will. And the projects varied from testing and delivering aircraft to meeting new airline clients and testing those airplanes, delivering them, and even doing initial certification work for those airlines as well. So I think that's what did it. I was A340, A330, A320 qualified. Of course, that was a big player. You needed to have that background. And many other airlines, and the unique thing about this company was, I've got 11 type ratings. I literally stayed current on every one of them during my time there, and doing a lot of certification work around the world. I did a big project at Cebu Pacific, who's a great airline now. They had a fatal crash, unfortunately, back in 97, I believe it was. I was part of the ICAO team to go get that airline up and flying again. And that was a huge project, literally A to Z, training every single pilot they had, bring them back to the US, getting them in the sim, get kind of doing PC checks in the airplane itself out in Manila to get the initial guys going, got 6 airplanes flying, brought the rest of the guys back, going through their manual sets. And I did another, other airlines like Air Jamaica with the MD-80, that was an add-on. Ryan International, DC-10, did their oceanic stuff going to Hawaii. The DC-10 was new to that airline, came in, proving runs with a guy named Mark Goodrich, who actually was the guy who hired me at International Flight Test Group later, and a dear friend to this day, brilliant guy, test pilot, NASA trained, lawyer, 14 type ratings, worked for Cathay, Singapore on the 744-400. And so anyway, that's probably the background that they were looking for. Certification guy, work with the regulatory authority, and that could do this work.
So that the experience you had with international flight test, is that kind of it sounds very similar to like what our functional check flight guys do, except you did it in all different types of aircraft, not just one. Is that a pretty good analogy?
That would be the exact analogy for an airline deal, but of course, you're not demoing, you're not representing the leasing company with a new airline while you're doing those flights. You know what I'm saying? There was usually three entities on the flight deck when we did those functional test flights, which is exactly the same protocols. We had in-house ones that were very well done. But same kind of protocols when you do a functional test flight at an airline application, except that you would have the representative from the aircraft owner, leasing company, if you will, the new airline that's getting it, they'll be on board, and then the MRO, the maintenance facility that did the work to get it ready to do it.
Okay.
So kind of a busy flight deck, lots of distractions. Doing it at an airline would be much easier. And then of course the paperwork to get that airplane from wherever it may be, South Africa to Manila afterwards, because the airplane is in limbo. So, ferry permits, overfly permits and all those things, whereas an airline, you would never have to mess with that stuff. So a little bit more involved, but very, very close to what you said.
So after you had done all that, doing the, you said it was about 50 hours of certification flights you had to do to get Virgin America launched. That was just kind of like a walk. I mean, for what you had been up to in the past, that it was entirely within your wheelhouse, not a stretch of the skill set there.
No, but we got our money's worth. I mean, it was a very high profile, very political certification. So, during the proving runs, you normally get one scenario card an hour, if you will. I knew we were going to get our money's worth when, before pushing back in San Francisco for our first JFK flight, I had 3 scenario cards going on as soon as they got to the flight deck. So I knew we were going to get our money's worth. So, and we did. But yeah, I was ready, and so was Rich, and so was the whole airline.
So explain to the listener here what a scenario card is.
A scenario card is that they write out a problem and to see how you're going to deal with it. That can be anything from, and I'll just say ones that we got. It can be anything from your generator is in op, run through the process. Well, that's real easy, right? We put it in the logbook, we MEL the generator, try to get it fixed, probably MEL it, see if we can operate. That's checking the manual set. That's checking to see if you go through the proper processes that are in your manuals to get to the right solution. It could be you're getting hijacked. What are you going to do? We got that scenario card right over Denver, 36,000 feet. So you lost an engine. Got that one on the ETOPS proving runs years later, of course, when we did that. That was the lead pilot on that one with a lot of the same guys from Washington. That was kind of funny. One of the lead guys that did the initial certification for Virgin was on the ETOPS certification much later. And he walked up on the flight deck and he looked at me and he goes, "You again, really?"
Were they?
But I had a secret weapon on that one. But anyway, we'll talk about that. But anyway, yeah. So just different scenarios that they go through, and I think they have about 260 of these scenarios, and we went through every one of them.
Okay. So about how many flights was that? About 10 flights?
50 hours worth.
Okay.
So that's the minimum that you can do. So I think and we just ran back and forth from, you would have loved this, Scott, San Francisco to JFK on all of them, except the last one we launched for JFK, and I ended up diverting into Denver with a hijack scenario. And once we landed in Denver, we were done.
Okay. And is that where the dude was based?
Yeah, probably, right? Yeah, no doubt, right?
So I know I asked you this in the past and I forget your answer. I heard a rumor that Virgin America, as it was making its decision whether or not it would ultimately be headquartered in San Francisco or New York, and I believe it also considered Boston or Washington, D.C., but that one of the reasons why it chose San Francisco is because the FSDO out there was going to be one of the best ones to collaborate with in launching and keeping up the certification of the airline. Does that ring true to you or not?
No, no, not at all. The matter of fact, we changed FSDOs. So you're right on all the above. So initially, the airline was headquartered in New York. That's where the very, very first 5 were based when the airline started. Boston was going to be the city we were going to go to be based at, and then we smartly segued over to San Francisco. Now there's I believe it's 2 FSDOs in the, I should know this, but time goes by and I'm getting old. But there's an SFO FSDO and there's the San Jose FSDO.
Yeah.
And as you know, the San Jose FSDO was the one that got our certificate, our AOC. And the FAA kind of decides that of how busy they are. The San Francisco FSDO is the one that's dealing with United. So it's, you don't get to choose who runs your deal. The FAA will, once you're located where you're going to be, they'll decide and see who has the bandwidth to handle the project. And they chose San Jose, and it was a fantastic team down there in San Jose. And they just did a really good job of oversight, strong oversight, but great team to work with. And I can't say enough about the whole group there.
Okay, so you get handed one of these, task cards or situation cards, and like you mentioned with the generator, you got to make sure that you go through your manual and you're following your manual's guidance as far as, can you operate? Do you need the MEL? Your contact with maintenance, is it flight crew MELable, or do you need a mechanic involved? All of that comes from the manual set. How did we create our manual set? One of the conjectures of early Virgin America pilots was like, man, these look awfully similar to the US Airways manual set. Was there any copying and pasting from other airlines manuals, or was it a lot of just kind of somebody writing the manuals and just knowing that they're being in compliance with whatever the 121 regs were for manual creation?
Yeah, kind of all the above. So you know this, Scott. A lot of it was off the shelf Airbus. So that makes certification seamless, right? But they're horrible. I mean, it's just like Boeing manuals are terrible. That's why every airline takes those manuals and creates their own. We didn't have a big tech pub department. Remember, I think it was 2 people.
Yeah.
We needed the simplicity of a kind of off the shelf product like Airbus would give us, but then we needed to segue into the usability of the way a traditional airline would do it, and that came over time. But and yes, all the above. So Joe Houghton, he was base chief in I think Pittsburgh for Airways. And we had a strong Airways presence at this airline. Matter of fact, if I remember correctly, I think I'm looking at one right now.
The Western side, which I don't think would qualify me as a real U.S. Airways pilot, and so.
But anyway, anything even Ryan International had some really good Airbus stuff. We tried to create a better document and take all the good from and like the pilot group, very same philosophy. Take the best from where everybody's been and try to make it Virgin.
Okay, that's cool. So talk about the pilot group and the pilots being different, and I'm gonna shift gears and start with pilot uniforms. Okay.
And why would you do that?
Well, because Well, actually, no, I'm talking about the original uniform. I'm not even there yet in what I know you're laughing at. But I there was a let's say a dual mindset in the pilots at early Virgin America. Yeah, we were doing something different, but also I don't know that we also liked that, we were perceived to be lumped in by management as, well, we're just like everybody else too. You gotta share your lounge, you gotta share, in,
Yeah.
you're more the same than equal than the other employees. And that to some extent that was welcome, and to another extent that was not welcome. And I found this really great quote by Fred Reed. It's great just because of what I think it's going to evoke in whoever is listening to this right now that may or may not have been a Virgin America pilot. I'm going to read it. Our pilots, for instance, want a closer relationship with the customer. And that's one reason why they dress informally and act informally. Pilots at other airlines say to us, hey, they don't look like pilots. And we say back to them, thank you. How do you feel about that quote by Fred Reed there?
Well, I think the world of Fred Reed, he's a character. And of course, our original CEO and the one we chose. Not the one we continued with, but that's a whole nother podcast. So, part of coming in there and early was to keep your mind open on a lot of things. I mean, so to me, there was that philosophy 100%, and Virgin pilots did it. It wasn't the JetBlue pilots were doing it too, doing the PA in the back, doing all those things. And we tried to talk with some people at the gate and Jetway. I'm not the most outgoing person, Scott. You know that. And it was hard for me to adjust to some of these things. I'm more of a type A pilot, but starting a new brand and one as exciting as Virgin, we wanted to kind of open it up a bit, open up dialogue with people. Hey, going through the screening, where are you going today? Back when we used to do that. Well, maybe you're on my flight. You should try Virgin. Doing all those things. So those are all kind of. What was it? We had the 3 reach outs on every flight, the going through screening at the gate and in the back, right? Things like that. That was all new. The uniform was definitely that as well. So yeah, no epaulets, no way to identify the pilots as pilots. I did not agree with that philosophy because I think that took it a little too far. I was really happy with kind of the way we ended up, meaning. Yeah. Not white uniforms, but you knew we were pilots. JetBlue, again, they did a lot of stuff like that as well, and good on them. So, but no ties and no hats is, I think, the way, in my mind, you became approachable, because we don't want to look like a third world dictator. I don't like that look at all. Scrambled eggs and the hat on and the button up and just rigid as heck. I don't like that, and to me, that's the other way. The way we came in initially, I think, was too much. So somewhere in the middle where we ended up was about right.
So what was the winning argument to move away from the Star Trek pins on your collar, which were the FO and captain's insignia, to the traditional shoulder boards, secured by the epaulette? If I remember correctly, I think it had something to do with us taking our planes for maintenance in South America, and that if we didn't wear a pilot shirt down there, that we wouldn't even be recognized as pilots by the airport authorities. What's your comment there?
Well, it didn't take South America. So it's funny how some of these things started, but no, it was going on in the United States. On the proving runs, I was going through security in New York, JFK. Guy wants to put me through extra screening because I wasn't in uniform. I said, I'm in uniform. He goes, no, you're not. No, you're not. So I grabbed I grabbed the FA right back then. I said, see, look at this. Look what's going on here. So I was, and not because I was, like I said, not wanting to be different and wanting a new approach on things. Far from it. But it became, and that was my deal. I was system chief pilot when we did do the uniform change, and it was, I was obviously in that role pushing hard to get them changed because, and I did lobby the FAA for assistance on that because that's where it needed to come from. That they should be uncomfortable that the pilot's not identifiable to security in an emergency. All those things. There's a reason why you can separate and being a team and being part of that group in the back with the flight attendants and gate people and all that great stuff, right? But you still have to be identifiable for what you are, and that's a pilot. And we can still accomplish that and be identifiable. So that was my argument. And then one day I just decided to order, I think, 1,000 epaulets, and I couldn't cancel them. That's and that's how I justify it. But yeah, no, it's anyway, that's the story.
So one of the things I'm wondering if you ever felt pressure about, because I if I remember correctly, our original manual set said you will be clean shaven, but I remember as long as you and your predecessors in the chief pilot's office were in power, there was no enforcement of longer mustaches or soul patches or even goatees. Nobody ever got corrected on the goatees and stuff like that until after you had left office. And I'm wondering, like, did you get any pushback from above and just sort of chose not to enforce that, or what was the deal with that?
Well, again, with a new approach to things, I like to, so kind of great segue there. We want to be part of a team, but we want to be pilots, right? So being a pilot, I wanted to give the pilots leeway. Yeah. European pilots have had full beards for decades. Yeah. This whole, like a lot of lots of things in aviation. The mass seal, which was the reason for the clean shaven, that's not even a factor anymore. You got full face mask; it's not even an issue. So so then you can the technical application for not having facial hair is out the window, right? So then you can say, what about looking professional? Well, I like to I tend to think I want to see what people do to be professional, not how they look. You can be the best pilot in the world and have a goatee, agreed? Or you could have a soul patch. It doesn't equate to professionalism. The optics of it, maybe, but one could argue that might be something that might make them approachable to the passengers or the guests. So I didn't. And I guess my point is, when I was system chief pilot, and I would hear so-and-so's got this, so-and-so's got that. Just like I didn't want to be the hat police, because I think that's ridiculous as well. Some people look good in hats, some people don't. Most of the people like me, it all does is make my head get hot. And I'm from Canada and grew up in central Canada in Winnipeg, and it's very cold there, and my blood is still thick, and I'm hot even without a hat. So I don't want to wear a hat because I'll look horrible. My head will get wet, and I'll look like I just got out of the shower, even if it's 50 degrees out, which, oh, by the way, is my favorite temperature. Yeah. So I think I would let somebody go with a light goatee or soul patch or whatever you call it, until it got crazy. And of course, there's always somebody who will show up with the Paul Tuttle mustache, which is a little ridiculous, right? And so unfortunately, that's the way it started going. And as a result, we have to pull it back a bit. But what do you think he says, right? Well, so-and-so, blah, blah, blah. Well, so-and-so is totally groomed, looks neat, but you're showing up like you're just got off the Harley, right? So, and again, so a little bit of a contrast there. I like to think that there's some happy medium in all that. But I guess in some stuff, it's just got to be cut and dry, right? And I guess pilots do that to themselves, right?
Well, yeah, and maybe it's just you never had to deal with it because of the timing of the issue, and unfortunately, the later guy maybe maybe it just got a little out of hand. I don't know. But in defense of at least one of those pilots rocking the FuManchus, he was, I would say, certainly one of our strongest pilots. We were too close in seniority, so I never got to fly with him, but lives in the Orlando area, very excellent pilot,
Well, there you go. So you can speak to his technical ability.
Yeah.
Did he look professional? Probably not in the eye of the traditional person.
Yeah,
but
no one ever doubted his effectiveness as the commander of the aircraft. Let's just say it like that, So, all right. So back to launching the airline, right? What was easy? What surprised you? What were your greatest challenges? In any particular order you want to answer any of those questions.
Nothing was easy. It was every step of the way was a battle, including getting the airline even launched. There were tons of battles, a lot of them very tough and a lot of them very stressful. And mostly, again, that all came in the beginning due to the uprising of Virgin citizenship, which was all nonsense in every respect, but I get it. Other airlines, it was a tough time. I think, United was in their third bankruptcy and was unable to compete. And their products certainly wasn't going to compete with ours at that time. And many others. And all the other ones were equally as troubled. On the first thing, what was tough, all of it, Scott. Getting it certified was tough, and everything was a battle. And there's a lot of folks that work real hard to get it done. There's a lot of people that really worked hard to help us get it done. So I would say that, from my standpoint, as one who was involved so much with the certification, the proving runs were definitely a challenge because of the scrutiny and the political nature of the certification. And then and because of the 8-month delay, hiring was tough too. And as you know, that after the airline was certified, that was only part of the story. We were still held up by a DOT political paper, if you will, that cost us 8 months. And I'm hiring pilots as quick as I can get them. In the meantime, I'm shooting over to Toulouse to pick up an airplane, fly it back. We're training, we're doing whatever, and everybody's sitting at home on min guarantee because that was the right thing to do because they made the commitment while we were battling these political forces to get our essentially a checkbox after I can guarantee we were the first airline in U.S. history to do proving runs and be a FAA certified airline before the very easy process of being DOT certified, which is just a checkbox exercise.
Yeah, so let's make sure that the listener is in the loop here. What do you remember approximately what month you got your proving runs done by?
I absolutely do. It was December of 06, December 15th of 06. We were a FAA certified airline.
Okay, so then 12 days later, the initial application was denied by the Department of Transportation, saying Virgin America did not meet the ownership requirements to be an airline in the United States. And so there are what are called cabotage rules. And correct me if I say any of this wrong. The cabotage rules effectively allow the U.S. government to nationalize any of its airlines so that they can, move troops in times of war and stuff like that. And so the fear, the concern, or the alleged fear or concern with Virgin Group is that the United States wouldn't be able to do that if it had an airline that was too much owned by a foreign interest. So what do you think about that denial? Was, sincere, on the money? What and what do you think about that denial was just politically motivated, hit on Virgin America?
Zero reality to pull that, all political and survival. Again, all the contested, I mean, the big airlines are heavily lobbied, and they have a lot of lawyers on their payroll, and they were hurting. So, from that aspect, I completely get it. You throw up whatever you can to see what sticks. Virgin America was the richest startup airline in U.S. history at that point, and could still be. I don't know, so we had a lot of money. We had a great product, and nobody could compete because they were all essentially either bankrupt or going that way, but had in the meanwhile completely demolished the ridership in the United States at the time. People were, like I said, the popularity of U.S. airlines were polling below the IRS. So, I tend to argue I'd rather not get audited and fly on a legacy carrier, but it is what it is. So, and last time I checked, so the cabotage rules, and you nailed it, Scott, it only applies to airlines, not to communication, telecom companies, nothing else. So foreigners can own any part of America they want, but airlines. Well, the person that they had the problem with is a chap named Sir Richard Branson, who is from the UK. Last time I checked, I don't think the UK is an adversary to the United States, in any way, or any threat not to go full in if the aircraft need to be commandeered for whatever purpose. Of course, Virgin would have, and Richard would have been more than happy to partake in that event. But it is a rule, and of course the ownership portion that he had was not a factor, and he continued to carry that even after we were allowed to fly. Yeah, that's kind of the way that went in, and you could probably imagine that I wasn't too thrilled with that whole ruling, as most of us are. We worked real hard to kind of wait 8 months. You talked about the FAA certification date, or we did, of 06 December. Of course, the launch date finally came in August of 07. 8 months of cash burn.
Yeah, and so the approval came, I believe, in May. The smoke signals that you were going to be allowed to operate as an airline in May. And it's funny because I was working at US Airways West at the time, and just had a really bad day at work on June 20th, and it was such a bad day at work. It's one of those ones where I just said, no way am I staying here at this airline.
Wow.
It was a couple weeks to a month after that, the Nicolau Award, which was the arbitration between the America West pilots and the US Air East pilots. And so both pilot groups hated each other. The East Side pilots had picketed and not just picketed, they, like 200 pilots didn't show up for work one day because they went to go picket the ALPA headquarters. We both did not appreciate management's perspective on anything. And I just said, this mess is not going to get anywhere good anytime soon. And after the day at work I had where I totally took care of the customers on my plane, and I didn't get supported by the chief pilot for doing so. In fact, telling that story, which I'm not going to go into right here, right now, was actually what got me the job, because I remember your eyes lit up and you were like, man, that's a great story. But Virgin was trying to do something different, but we did have the pressure, as a pilot who came to work for Virgin. When you have the Airline Pilots Association protesting the launch of your airline, you don't want to be seen as a quote unquote scab in the industry or a pariah. And my very first experience of trying to jump seat to work was on United Airlines. And there was I'll still remember his name probably till the day I die. I got on his plane, And he's like, Virgin America, you're not riding on my airline. And the FO was like, are you serious? He's like, absolutely, get off my plane. And that was my first try. And I was like, oh my God, what did I get into? Like, is this what, trying to jump seat on airlines in the United States was going to be like? And, interestingly, I've jump seated, hundreds of times since then. That was the only time I've ever been denied. But I'm wondering what you guys, on your end from the management side of things, what were your concerns? Were you seeing stuff like that happen a lot where our guys were having problems being accepted, and what was the solution?
Yeah, well, first of all, what a ridiculous idiot that guy was, right? Well, what kind of a fool is he? But it happened, and it happened at other ones as well. Then I hired a chap named Kevin Dalton and put him in charge of the jump seat committee, and he did a great job of working out those kinks. But you look at how trivial and nonsensical that all was, but the nonsense that all surrounded Virgin certification and the political nature of it all. I wonder if, looking what's going on now, do Breeze pilots have trouble jump seating? Does all these other new startup airlines? Do you think there's that guy still out there doing all that? Well, you got to wonder why that guy would be so adversarial to you.
Well, but the interesting thing, my conjecture is, or my hypothesis is that we, and in no small part to the leadership on the matter offered by Kevin Dalton, changed the industry as far as, hey, look, man, we're going to take everybody. You can get through CAS, you can get past the security checkpoint, and you can show up in their CAS system, man. Welcome aboard, and by being truly gracious to everybody, it got, hey, guys liked riding on our planes going to work, man. If you were an Alaska pilot, a Continental pilot, and you could take a Virgin America plane to work, well, that's what you wanted to do. So you better not have some jackwagon, jeopardizing your ride to work on this hot, sweet ride with the IFE and all that stuff. And I really think we were a big part of changing the culture of jump seating in the United States for the better, and in no small part thanks to you empower someone like Kevin Dalton to go knock down every obstacle, and he's just gonna
Yeah, great guy. I mean, what an awesome job he did. And you're right. I mean, if there's seats going, why wouldn't we want to take people, and help them out and do those things?
Yeah.
That'd be criminal not to. Like I said, somebody who would deny somebody a jump seat like that just blows my mind. It's terrible.
Yeah. So the biggest, most coolest thing about riding on Virgin America, or one of the most prominent things, was our in-flight entertainment system. In fact, I just learned today, I didn't realize that Charles Ogilvie passed away a couple of years ago. I was sad to learn that. It was so cool and so interesting the first couple of years, sort of troubleshooting issues going on with the IFE, because from the start it was pretty reliable, it worked pretty well, but it wasn't perfect. And since we were the first airline doing it, it had a lot of kinks to be worked out. And you'd get a reply right back from Charles, who had the power, I think, from his BlackBerry device to send you an ACARS message to your to your ship to help you troubleshoot what the issues was. Talk a little bit about the complexity of being the first airline to launch such a complex system like that.
Yeah, and Charles, what a great guy, what a class act, brilliant guy. And we had lots of people like that, Scott, as you know. But yeah, so again, just because nowadays although some airlines are choosing a different way to do it, not the in-flight deal, but a lot of airlines are all in, Delta being one of them, that are all in on having, of course, internet. That's the price of admission nowadays, right? But also having seat back entertainment, because Delta, I guess, understands, like we did at Virgin, that people want to be using their personal devices, but they also want a movie playing at the same time and be multitasking, and maybe even another laptop going. So it wasn't just, I want to come in and log on to Wi-Fi. Yes, and yes is really where it's at. So back when we came up, again, 05, the Virgin concept and planning was originally kicked off back in 04, 05, and delays and stuff had happened in 06. But back then, everybody, what did you have? You had this like almost like like your grandfather's TV console in the middle of the aisle. You remember that, Scott?
Yeah.
You'd have 4 of them going through the plane, and if you had the window seat, you couldn't see it because of the bulkhead or the bags, or the overhead bin rather. But that was in-flight entertainment, And then of course when times got tough, 05, 06, all that time in there when Virgin was launching, pull them out, so whatever in-flight entertainment, if you want to call it that, they had was soon coming right out of the plane, and you had nothing. You had the in-flight magazine again in the back of somebody's head to look at on a transcon. Seems archaic at the nowadays, but of course this stuff's all relatively fresh. So I think we were the first airline to have all of our whole fleet with Wi-Fi. Others were jumping on that Wi-Fi. That came after, of course. But to answer your question about the initial product of Virgin for the in-flight entertainment portion, Red, was trying to probably do too much right out of the chute. But when it worked, it was beautiful. It was very innovative. And when it didn't, we flew planes that, ran around a little bit and didn't have it in, but it was still better than, everybody else that didn't have anything, right? And it worked more than it didn't, without a doubt. And of course, you have to realize that there was plans for version 1, version 2, version 3, and it was always going to keep advancing and getting better.
Yeah.
So those things didn't happen. There's a reason for that, but there was always versions that were going to come that were going to fix all that stuff, and that was in place. It was going to be a big part of the Virgin experience moving forward.
I remember being at Refresh, which was for the listener, the company Kool-Aid session, engineered by the people department to ensure that we were all, working on the same page. And there would come a point in Refresh where you could choose your own journey. Did you want to go listen to some leader talk about this, or did you want to go listen to another leader talk about this? And I remember one of the options was you could go and listen to, I believe his name was Ken Beiler, talk about cabin 2.0 or cabin 3.0. And I remember my friend Chad said to me, he's like, no, we're not going over there. He's like, that stuff is Narnia. It's never gonna happen. This place is gonna, something else will happen. None of that fantasy stuff is coming. And sadly, he was right. None of that stuff did ever come. But not that maybe that there wasn't a time in the past where that might have become the future if different things didn't happen, but it didn't. So that is what
it didn't. It was all planned to be, and Ken was a big part of that as well. Great guy. Well, he was the guy in a lot of ways, but to try to make it happen, the technology side of it, and that was his job. I mean, that literally, he worked on that constantly. Yeah. So it was going to happen, but I can sit here all day telling you what led to what and what led to what and what led to what and why it didn't happen, but that's not really important. But he was right, it didn't happen.
One of the challenges that existed at Virgin America, and I'm, if you could go back and do it over, and I'm not sure that I'm not going to over romanticize like Herb Kelleher and Southwest, right? Because lore has it, and I haven't done research on this, so I'm probably wrong, but that he sort of invited his labor groups to unionize, be like, hey, listen, you're all getting too big for me to treat you as individuals, form a union, we'll iron out a deal and get it going. Whereas at Virgin, that was obviously not the culture embraced by leadership. What did you see about the challenges there? Did you kind of feel like you were kind of between rock and a hard place as far as like having to sort of pitch in a different direction, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally, I do. I don't know if that's true about Southwest.
I don't know either.
Yeah. I mean, talk about Southwest for a second and just kind of that whole deal. They had 10 airplanes after 10 years. They were in a Texas airline that were kind of, not really worried about it in any respect by anybody. The growth was very, very slow, as you can imagine, 10 airplanes after 10 years. Sometimes you got to give luck a chance, right? And look what happened to that airline. What an amazing story, and what an amazing guy Herb is. FedEx, Fred. Over FedEx, he's launching this overnight package deal with the Falcon jet, and everybody laughed at him and said, "You can't do that. Joe Bob's flying Navajos and delivering mail here and doing all that stuff. You can't fly these jets and do that." And you probably are familiar with this, the famous story of he couldn't make payroll. He went to Vegas and laid the whole airline, the FedEx airline, on a roll of the dice and won. Yeah. Made payroll, went out and got more money, and the rest is history.
Yeah.
So I don't think anybody was busting down Southwest's door to go work there in the beginning. I don't think anybody was busting down FedEx's door in the beginning. And the guys that probably went there, I think the last thing on their mind was a union. Could be wrong, but in both cases, it came much, much, much later in the game. Yeah. So sometimes you got to give luck a chance, and that's what I want to say about those two airlines or situations. Virgin was a lot like that in the beginning. You come in, is everything perfect? Hell no, not even close, right? I can honestly say to you, Scott, to this day, we looked at everything and tried to make it the best we could do at any given time, and constantly made it better and better and better right up until the merger. Yeah. In respect, that was an honest to God. I can say that wholeheartedly in every respect, and we did what we could. So unions, that was your discussion there. So does management go out and solicit a union? Of course not. I can't think of one instance in aviation where that happened. I could be wrong, but that certainly wasn't the mindset. As system chief pilot, when I was there, was I anti-union? No, absolutely not. I got a 20-year ALPA bid. But am I going to go again bust down the door? A lot of people, and to me, it's a real simple discussion. If management, and perfect discussion about who should run your country too, for that matter. You get the president you deserve, and you get the union. You get the union you deserve if management isn't getting it done. Yeah. So I think, and that's the way I always presented that too. I'm not anti-union, not one bit. Am I going to try to set it up? I don't know anybody who has. I think that'd be. As a matter of fact, I don't even know if that's possible. How could a chief pilot or anybody in the management team at an airline call up ALPA and say, I want these guys to be an ALPA carrier? What if the pilot group didn't want it? That's a pilot group decision. Yeah, all through and through.
I got you. Right? Well, interestingly, and this was well after your leadership, I have been made aware, and I'm that there were significant threats of some of our ALPA organizers, back when it became the ALPA thing, not the the attempt before that to be an independent they were given sort of direct threats against their jobs. Like, hey, if you guys show up at San Francisco airport today, you're not going to have jobs tomorrow, to talk to pilots. And so there was definitely a culture of, hey, we're gonna intimidate you for it. But at least then. And so interestingly, and those guys had the stones because they showed up anyways, and they didn't lose their jobs, and they took it as, this was an empty threat, and and more power to them for doing so. And also, I think it also does speak volumes. Well, first off, I think that they ran the right type of union drive where they kept it very professional. They didn't denigrate the company, and they made it just about, hey, we want a collective voice. And they ended up running one of the most successful, if not the most successful, union drive in the history of ALPA. And we did so without also making it a bad place to work in the process, which is nice, because that was just one of the things. I mean, I did support the ALPA drive. I did. I even supported the first one, but I think it's a good thing actually that the first one didn't work, because I think we did better with ALPA. But you don't want it to end up the type of place where people are taking crap. Well, flight cases.
No kidding. To me, that whole scenario went down exactly how it should be. Exactly. I started committees. I wanted the pilot group involved in every aspect of it. As you know, I think you were on a couple of them, if not. Yeah. So I started those committees. I wanted feedback. I wanted, it was all, I wanted to be all of our airlines. I believe that whole philosophy, right? And then sometimes as time goes on, for whatever reason, and the climate changes and it's time to take it to the next step, then you do it. And the pilot group is the one, and I guess that's my point. The pilot group is the one that makes that determination. Management doesn't. They're always gonna fight it, right? And I for whatever reason, I don't necessarily agree with that. I'm far from anti-union, and I voted for it too. So but at the end of the day, it's the pilot group that makes the decision. And it would when that came down at Virgin, it was a tremendous success. It was well run, and the percentages were off the charts, right? To go union, and so perfect, as it should be.
So as the system chief, when you were the system chief, you're the guy. You're there at the best and worst times of managing pilots. What and just managing operational situations. What were the best and worst times of being a system chief pilot?
So I was kind of a begrudging chief pilot in this respect. I'll clarify it. So when I was brought in, it was to certify the airline, like we talked about, and in my wheelhouse, love that. That's what I like to do. It was a challenge. It was a high profile certification, and with that came a lot of work, but also, it was very cool to be doing this project and getting it across the finish line. There was a lot of challenges there. After that had happened, so that's when I became chief pilot. As you probably remember, certification was completed with the FAA, and we were in the no man's land of waiting for the DOT to just politically decide if we were going to be American enough to join, to become an airline, I guess. Kind of tongue in cheek there. But then I became chief pilot, and the first when I said it was when I was chosen to be that by the management team. The FAA had a big say in it as well. They wanted that continuity from somebody who'd been there and done the certification to carry on, start hiring pilots and keeping the certification of the airline going. So I got that. To me, I said I'll do it for 2 years because it's not really my why I came here, but I get it and I'll do it for 2 years. And then later, I think I even said on a pilot call one time that if you're going to be an effective chief pilot in today's industry, you really ought to have almost like a Supreme Court judge. You really ought to have a term limit, because if you're doing your job really well and representing the pilot group, which you should be, you're probably burning bridges on the management side of the house, right? And if you're too much that way, well, then your pilot group is definitely gonna want you to be gone. So to me, it's a tough job because it's a constant push on one side to keep the other where they should be. And you should always, to me personally, in my opinion only, and it's different with a union without, because you have a contract, you can just say, what does the contract say, right? It's actually easier being a system chief pilot or chief pilot in general when you have a contract. But when there's not, I have to protect and represent the pilot group way more than if we had a contract. Does that make sense? And I think there's plenty of instances, and you may know of a few of them, where I did exactly that.
One of the things you were involved with, even before you were a chief pilot, was interviewing pilots. Talk about any fun or not so fun moments there.
Well, the process there was kind of virginized as well, and it was brilliant. So we had that pre-visor test where everybody's got to have a test, right? And I was, as a typical pilot, I was pretty skeptical about this test until I wrote it. And it attached 5 attributes to you, at least the initial one, 5 attributes to you, your personality. And and again, if you just answer the question totally honest, and I had the luxury of already being hired and I could be completely honest on this test, it would cage you really well. Matter of fact, the 5 attributes nailed me. So I scored fairly well on the test, and essentially it's just a typical test of that nature. It's going to ask you the same questions differently many times. So did you answer honestly? And for people that are watching or going through any interview process, whenever you get a test like this, just answer honestly. Not that this is a question on any of them, but if it says, do you like a parent more than the other? If you do, say it. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, because then the way it'll be worded later in line, and there's nothing wrong in that respect, So there's the truthful part of the test, and then the attributes that it'll apply to you. And Virgin Fit was one of them. So as I told you before, I'm not the most outgoing person in the world. I'm pretty private overall. So on Virgin Fit, I really, probably scored a little lower in that aspect because I'm not the one at a party going out and, need to be the life of the party. Far from it. I'd like to just have conversations with some certain people, to give you an example, right? Yeah. But there's people that are outgoing like that. I think about Mike Mack for that, a very outgoing guy, right? Matter of fact, that's how I met the guy, way back, when I was doing the Cebu Pacific certification. I met Mike Mack at NATCO, and I was checking in with my students to go DC-9 sim training, and he was doing something there, and he just came right over and started talking. I never would have done that, right? Yeah. So he's gonna, but at the end of the day, so you had the test. So if you're honest on the test, you're gonna get past the test. But many didn't. Many very, very good pilots didn't get through that damn thing. And the best guidance I could have gave him was, be honest and you'll be fine. And if you were honest, I don't think you'd ever fail that test, and like tests like that. But then, of course, there was the round table, and the round table was in a room setting, and you had the typical question, tell me about a time, blah blah blah, right? Yeah. And it didn't matter how you answered that question, if you will, but you could answer it any way you want. You just tell the story and see if you engage. But I'm more looking at kind of like the other people. Is the guy in the corner paying attention to what Scott's saying? Is he engaged with that, or is he too cool for school? But you'd be amazed of how some people would tune out and pretend like that they were just too cool to be there. And then when they got to the question, they would say something really silly. I mean, there was all kinds of silly things in there. So you kind of would give the people a chance to be themselves, to lighten up the room, but let their personality come through.
Yeah.
And the lighter you got it, the more the personality would come through and they get unguarded. And of course, that was the goal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Was to get the guard down and let the real person come out. And that's hard to do. So you can, and then of course there's a formal one-on-one interview as well. So all those things combined, and and of course you still have to have the price of admission. It was, the skill set, the time requirements, all those things, which were very high at Virgin, as you know. Our first 500 guys were extremely qualified people, extremely qualified. Been at many airlines, been check airmen, 6,000 to 15,000 hours. It's way more than the normal airline, and it needed to be, because we were growing fast and we needed to have that kind of dynamic.
Yeah.
So, and the lucky part for Virgin was airlines were dropping like flies, right? So unfortunately, I got to pick a lot of great people from Aloha, from ATA, from Ryan, from Airborne, and I did all the above. And then we did a class of 10, and we'd have 2 from each there, and no one dynamic would be dominating, and you'd all have to get together and you'd become Virgin.
So that brings up an interesting point. 2008 was a bitch of a year in the airline industry. There was many airlines failed, right? Aloha, ATA, Midwest Express. I don't think that ABX or DHL actually failed, but they became such bad jobs that guys were leaving there in droves. Before 2008, like when I applied, you didn't have as many people applying, but you knew that everyone applying wanted to work for Virgin because they were applying and they probably already had a job. Now the market gets flooded with displaced pilots who don't have jobs. So the available resource of qualified people from an hours and experience perspective becomes easier. But the challenge then becomes is, how do you know that this guy who just lost his job actually is a good fit for Virgin America? So talk about that a little bit.
Sure, no, a little bit of a different dynamic, but still the same process. Yeah, is he leaving the job? No, the job left him. But does he have the skill set to come over? That's what we had to do, and we were very picky. At the time when we were growing real fast, I needed everybody that would come to the interview to show up. There was times when we had 10 come in and we took no one. Yeah, and that really hurt. We wanted them all, but we didn't. So we essentially, Scott, we got to be really picky during the times when there was lots of people out there. Not that we weren't in the beginning too. There was enough people that had just had enough, and arguably 05, 06, 07 were equally as bad in the industry. So yeah. You described what you had enough, and there was a lot of people like that, and there are a lot of airways guys that had been 20-year guys and back in the right seat and making 80 grand a year, so that's pretty tough.
When I decided I wanted to leave U.S. Airways West, though, there were not a lot of options. There was Southwest, but I think I would have had to have gone and I didn't technically need a 737 type, but I still did need a 737 type. Or it was finish my 4-year and apply it, maybe UPS. But there weren't other places to go to still even then. But I looked at Virgin America and the opportunity there. And if I could have been in the top 100 guys at JetBlue, man, look at where I'd be today. And
right.
That's kind of what I was hoping for. And look, it ended up okay, right? But
yeah,
it ended up how we thought it was going to end up.
Yeah, it's a bittersweet thing, especially for somebody like me who's got a lot of scar tissue with that whole process there. But somebody like you as well, it could have been worse, and it could have been a lot better the way it all went. It's it's the nature of the beast. I think Scott, between you and I, we're probably on the cusp of another round of mergers in this industry. So, it's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah. So, any insight on potential for future mergers from here? What do you think I mean, I realize we're just spitballing now and, but any insight on what you think the DOT will, or the DOJ will or won't allow? Because it seems to me that we're going to use the pilot shortage as the reason to not worry so much about antitrust concerns. That's what I'm betting on.
Well, I hard to argue that. You can actually pick one. That's a good one. How about COVID? So prior to COVID, there were some airlines really leaking water, and some that were strong. I mean, when we find ourselves at is very strong, and hats off to them. Fiscal responsibility they nail it. But others weren't in that situation. I think prior to COVID, we were well on our way to the next round of stuff happening. COVID, the U.S. taxpayers bailed everybody out. Our line didn't need it, didn't need that bailout, but many did, and we're surviving on that and getting through. Well, that money's kind of gone away now, and now the leaks are starting to show up at several different carriers. Again, I don't think that the U.S. taxpayer or the country, for that matter, is able to come around with another one. Bailout package like that, and then arguably nor should they. If you're going to go with the hard corporate, the strong will survive aspect, maybe that shouldn't be the way it goes. So that, coupled with the pilot shortage, would kind of be a good reason why the DOJ isn't going to be able to say a whole lot when these next round starts to come.
Yeah.
And we've already got one, right? We've already got the Spirit Frontier thing going on. And who's next? I don't know. All the remaining suspects have already done this dance once, so that's not going to be a disqualifier. So it's going to be an interesting time.
I don't know how to make sense of JetBlue trying to take over Spirit because some people thought that maybe other mergers that we are aware of and have been involved in may have had some cultural mismatches. Just knowing the high scores JetBlue gets on the JD Power for culture and customer satisfaction, how you're going to suddenly turn that many Spirit employees into delivering a consistent JetBlue product?
You know who needs the merger the most? It ain't Spirit, it's JetBlue. JetBlue's the one who needs that. They from the outsider looking in, product wise, absolutely, JetBlue's got a better brand and a better product, in my opinion. But that's not what carries the water these days. It's so JetBlue, again, and we're just kind of, this is all opinions, right?
Yeah.
But JetBlue doesn't have the ability to purchase Spirit any more than they did Virgin America. But what did JetBlue do in our situation? They got Alaska really motivated, and the purchase price probably went up quite a bit. Okay. This is what's gone on with the Frontier thing, what they're trying to do as well. But for some reason, maybe Frontier is a little smarter or knows this already and has seen this game. Maybe they got the background that they've seen this show one time already from JetBlue, trying to jump in on this, saying they're going to do something.
Or it harkens back to I think it was sometime around 2004 that America West was in talks to merge with ATA, and Southwest jumped in and outbid ATA and just basically dismantled the airline rather than have America West merge with ATA. And right. So you think it's that type of stuff going on? Because
I really do, and I think the stakeholders involved with Frontier and Spirit see right through it, and hence not even entertain the whole deal. So,
Okay.
but that doesn't change, and maybe, you know, it illustrates what we're talking about here. I think JetBlue needs a dance partner real bad, and they may be the one that kicks off the next round after the Frontier Spirit thing. There's history with that group. I believe it's the Indigo group. So that was kind of no brainer. They you know, that's going to happen. But then again, it leaves kind of JetBlue out there, and you know, I think they're going to be the big player on the next round of something for someone. Yeah.
Or
Again, my opinion could be totally wrong.
maybe the shareholders vote for JetBlue. I mean, how much? I looked up the ownership of Spirit. It's mostly like, you know, retirement funds and stuff like that, and capital funds. Any chance that they actually, you know, are compelled by the $30 a share with the?
Well, it's a fiduciary responsibility. So clearly, however the deal is structured, or the offer is structured by JetBlue. Because I mean, really, if you're on the board, you shouldn't have an opinion on whether, you know, you want the deal or not. It's all fiduciary responsibility. Well, so if the deal is struck such as that they believe that it's not really, you know, however they're doing it isn't the right deal in that regard, they're going to go with the most real, the highest number. But if the highest number is structured in a way that doesn't make it real, and I'm not saying that's what's going on, but it from the outside looking in, because I have no insight, just knowing that what they tried to do with the Virgin situation. But so, you know, I don't know, Scott. We'll see how it all plays out. But there's a reason why Frontier and Spirit Spirit isn't entertaining this JetBlue offer. So, you know, I guess time will tell.
Hey, so this discussion of will the shareholders vote in line with the board recommendation of Spirit? It reminds me of something I always wondered about the ownership structure of Virgin America, right? And I'm going to use the analogy of how Great Lakes Airlines was run, right? Great Lakes Airlines never made any money, right? Maybe some years barely profitable, other years lost money. We can't give you guys raises. We don't make money. But the owner of Great Lakes Airlines owned the FBOs, owned the printing press that printed up all the paperwork for Great Lakes Airlines. He owned all of these other companies that fed the beast.
Yeah.
And the beast could never make money, right?
Yeah.
So I always wondered, who owned the airplanes? There were always some leasing company that you couldn't really figure out who owned the airplanes. And interestingly, I remember the future owner of what after Virgin America was sold complaining like, man, you guys really paid awfully high on these aircraft leases. Well, you know, what was going on there? The aircraft leases. Can you speak to it or not?
I'll say this because you know, I like I said, I've told you this before. I view myself as somebody who's forward-looking and don't want to go down that.
I can cut. I'll cut this out then, dude. Okay,
No.
I'll cut it out.
No, it's okay. You know, I'll say this: the leases were high, and there's a story behind that. But I, you know, there's a few stories behind that, really. You know, one was the initial delay in certification and the risk that the leasing companies had. And then the restructuring that happened thereafter. So there's a few stories there, Scott, but yeah, there's more to that for sure.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, because I mean, like, look, our investors ultimately ended up doing very well because I believe that the people who bought Virgin America paid like the highest price ever relative to the size of an airline.
The investors did very well from day one.
the frustrating part of that being a pilot, I mean, aside from, like any social activism that one might be compelled to think about, is as you're living the drama of, oh man, are we going to exist as an airline because we're not profitable yet? I mean, I always sort of took comfort guessing that I do believe people are making money off this airline right now. I don't think we're going out of business, and turned out it was the case, right? It was a very good deal for the people who own Virgin America, for Virgin America to exist, and when I was considering jumping ship from being a year 3 pilot at US Air Western there, it was, hey man, if Virgin can stay in business for 500 till I get 500 hours of captain time, well, then I can go chase expat jobs around the world. Or we stand alone and I become a pretty senior pilot at a pretty great airline. Or someday we get bought or sold. I remember thinking this as I was making the decision. It's like, and if you get bought or sold and you're a relatively senior pilot, you might think you get screwed over, but you don't get screwed over. You do. Even the top 1,000 guys at TWA did okay. It's just everybody that wasn't top 1,000 that. Yeah. So you got any other closing thoughts you'd like to share? Any experiences? Did you ever have anything that you kind of wished you could have shared with the pilot group that you couldn't or didn't, or things that could have resolved that,
Oh, there's plenty of that, and it was just the nature of the beast of how the whole Virgin thing went down. But I'll say this, I do want to say this. So it blew my mind how the brand is a world brand, and it's a great brand. Whatever it is about the squiggly Virgin writing, people identify to it. I don't know, Starbucks got the best coffee in the world. I know I like it a lot, but people line up down the street for it, where Pete's might be just as good. But for whatever it is, brand equity is something that is it's mind-boggling. You either have it or you don't. So Virgin is a positive brand equity in every respect. However, that doesn't mean that you get a box that says, follow these instructions and you will be a successful version of Virgin. But it always blew my mind of how all the people at our airline dove right in and made it Virgin. There was lots of times when Sir Richard or other Virgin people would say, this is the most Virgin of all about Virgin America, from the pilots to the Inflight to everybody. So that part of it, super proud of. That wasn't me, that was everybody who did it, but I'm just so proud of everybody for diving in and leaving all that mess from behind wherever they came from, because it was a bad time in our industry, and coming in and diving in and doing it. It was so cool. It made me super proud to have done the work and did what I did to contribute to it all. But it really was the frontline people that killed it. Killed it in a good way. I mean, that made it what people like you, people like all the pilots brought the technical attributes in, but with a great twist and flair that a lot of airlines try to copy now, Scott. You know that, but are they doing it? I don't know. So that's probably the what I want to say the most is that Virgin America was a cool airline. It won every award it could win from the day it was launched to the day it ended, and people loved it. And the flying public is not as good as it could have been had Virgin been here. And it's where we are now is a great airline as well, and I have nothing against that whatsoever. So great and proud of it equally, but there should have been a place for Virgin America at all times in the United States. I think that's what Richard wanted, and that's what we all wanted to, and the frontline people accomplished that. They did it.
Something else that we accomplished, which I'd like to hear your perspective on, that we haven't talked about yet, is Virgin America had an excellent safety record.
Yes.
Why was that?
Again, it was the pilots and everybody involved that came in with the background and the attributes to do it. We had a good training department. We had very experienced. The pilot group at Virgin was a very experienced group.
Yeah.
I heard different stories about how, oh yeah, we're hiring, low time people, blah blah blah, and it's dangerous. It was so far from the truth, it was laughable. So that's I attributed that safety record to exactly those things. People came in and brought brought the good, left the bad behind, and created something good. And training in the pilot group were a big part of that.
What could you say that you could see from your perspective about the culture at Tech Ops? Because I mean, I've never enjoyed such a great relationship with so many mechanics, so many maintenance controllers, other managers of maintenance. Say a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, great bunch. And I think Tech Ops is kind of hand in step with pilots. They're having the same issues at the same airlines the pilots were. In regards to quality of life, pay going down, whatever, of those things, and all the usual suspects. So when they come over, it's a very similar group. And also when they come over to a place like Virgin, we try to change the dynamic. I mean, sometimes that maintenance piloting can be adversarial. We may have seen that at different carriers in the past. We tried to blow all that out as well, right? And make it different. And they got the same spiel we did about trying to bring the good, leave the bad, make it better. And that I think is a nutshell why we ended up with such a great Tech Ops group and Inflight and pilots and everybody in between and guest service, right? Gate agents. We have a lot of really great people there as well. So,
and obviously, Inflight, I'm not forgetting you. You guys were, the number one reason why we won all our awards.
They're a big part. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Rob. I don't know if this is the last question, but it just popped in my brain as far as pressures that I know that you kind of had to deal with, or situations you had to manage as chief pilot. And I'm sure that, our director of security would have to be involved in decisions like that too. Sometimes you'd have pilots or a flight crew wanting to enforce some type of more structured legal action or whatnot. I'm thinking of times like when somebody would allegedly, not a crew member, a guest, a passenger would allegedly, flush a bag of weed down the toilet, right? And I remember some vague stories of people wanting hey, we want the authorities to meet the plane here because we know that this guy had weed on him, and things coming back hey, you don't know what the guy had, and if it's not there anymore, why are we getting involved in this? And so kind of talk about the role you had to play as a chief pilot, where you sort of had to protect the dignity of the airline and balance the security interests of the airline itself versus what an individual pilot or crew member might see as their responsibility to enforce the law or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, you bet. So, I mean, the perfect example of that would be Medlink, right? You get a problem in the back. So and so passed out. Maybe might be the message, and this is the whole reason why Medlink exists. But it is a perfect example for other issues like you're describing. And so, of course, if the captain says, "Under captain authority, I'm not calling anything. I'm landing right there," right? And so you land in, and of course, either the wheels hit the ground and wakes up the drunk guy, and he's like, "Hey, I was fine. I'm like, and they're like, oh yeah, there's an ambulance waiting for you. You gotta get off the plane." And the guy's like, well, I'm not getting off the plane, So the Medlink is the buffer there to protect the pilot from making the right or wrong decision. And on the flip side of that is if the captain just doesn't call a Medlink and ends up in a place where he shouldn't be, and the guy dies. And if you just would have flown another 50 miles ahead of he would have got to the best heart surgeon if it was a heart attack or whatever, the better care. So those things were there to take that liability away from the flight crew. So when you apply that same kind of stuff to any situation, a disruptive passenger, whatever, you got to bring people in to unload the liability for the airline and for the pilot. And that's what Medley was all about, but it segues into all kinds of issues on the plane.
Yeah.
Where that's why, ACARS is great, sat phones are great for pilots to use as a tool, but never, I tell guys when I was doing OE, is like, never just go ahead and do that. And, there's been pilots that have done that medical thing where I'm the pilot in command and I land over here. And then, it's like, well, that's not gonna be a good situation in the hearing when that family's lawyer it sues you and the airline, and you're in the hearing, and you say, and the lawyer says, Scott, are you a doctor? Are you a doctor? How did you know that you needed to get the guy on the ground so fast? Did you know that this clinic was another 30 miles straight ahead? That's a pretty lonely place, right? You don't want to be on that deal. So you've got to hedge your bet as somebody in charge, as a captain, whether it's a guy with the pot or whatever. And sometimes flight attendants get emotional, and sometimes they don't de-escalate. They escalate, and oh, by the way, you get to interpret that as well, right? And then a lot of times you're going to have to make the determination to de-escalate with a flight attendant because they want a SWAT team to beat the plane. maybe it could have been handled differently. So it's a slippery slope, but for all the pilots out there, hedge your bet. If it's a Medlink issue, put that on Medlink. Let them make the decision. It's like, you're not a doctor. It's not your decision. If there's a disruptive passenger, follow the protocols and bring in outside help and make a decision. And always you got to try to, because flight attendants a tough job. Boy, I sure couldn't do it. But in the heat of the battle, sometimes they get a little bit too emotional and passionate, and they might be the one that is making a determination they maybe shouldn't. Yeah. And you got to kind of weed that out as the pilot in command as well. So I don't know if that's what you're getting at, but there's a lot of liability personally, and there's a lot of liability for the airline too to do the right thing.
Yeah, you answered it well. But as a further thought, was there ever any time when you kind of felt like, man, I really understand where this pilot is coming from. I kind of agree with them, but as the representative of the company here, I kind of got to represent a different interest. Did you ever have a situation like, did you ever look at it like that? Or did you always feel like it was kind of more of a holistic, like the right thing is the right thing?
No, there are plenty of times, lots of situations, maybe not that on that high of a level. There'd be a situation that would come up that I would want to always protect the pilot. That was my number one goal. How can I save this guy? What happened? And then later on, maybe you got some more information. Well, first of all, everything's on tape these days. So, there's no secrets, man. On a layover hotel, they know your key swipes. They know what bar you're at. There's cameras in bars and everything. So in a situation maybe like somebody had made a bad decision, I still would always want to protect the pilot or the person involved. I don't want to fire anybody. That was my deal. I don't want to fire anybody if I don't, but sometimes there's, the story that came initially was defendable, but then later some evidence would come up that made it indefendable, and there's nothing you could do, and that sucked, So I don't know if that's what you're kind of getting at there, but there is liability for the airline, and people make bad decisions sometimes, and unfortunately, those bad days, if it escalates to a level of scrutiny, they may pay for it with their jobs. So, and that's the last resort, man. That's I hate those kind of situations, but as a chief pilot, no matter what airline you're at, you're gonna have those days. So
yeah,
and they're not good days.
Yeah. And I think just from observing the experience of what you and people like you went through that you had to deal with. You'd have some characters that would like just the two pilots up there in the flight deck, and all of a sudden the captain just gets up and walks back and goes to the lab, right? And maybe he starts serving the first class passengers some wine. Just remembering back to the early days of Virgin America, like we were trying to find different people, right? People who did things differently, that rejected the legacy mentality. And I think with that came a little bit more variance maybe than we were hoping for, right? Sometimes. And just from what I observed, some of those people could be counseled to where they needed to be, and other people couldn't. What was your perspective on situations like that? Do you know what I mean? Like, was that the biggest pain in your ass to have to deal with, or did you often find it rewarding when it did, kind of come together, or both?
Oh, sure. Yeah, both. Absolutely, man. Absolutely. No, if I could, there's plenty of times when I was very happy that, I could save somebody's job by working through an issue where if it was a union, it'd probably be more clear cut. And that's the deal with a union. You have a contract, that contract's contract. There's no discretionary deals there, right? Because that's, so that makes it easier for the management group to say, hey, this is the contract. This is what you guys agreed to. So, that's the contract, that's it. Where if you had work rules or you could be a little more understanding and try to work around those edges a little bit more. Now, it's a safety security. It's being a pilot is a technically challenging and safety oriented position. If you went outside of that box on purpose, you're in a lonely spot. There's nothing we can do.
Yeah.
And that's just, we all know that as pilots, right?
Yeah.
People make mistakes. Don't get me wrong. That's okay. That's going to be supported. We're going to do better, whether it means training or whatever. But if you go out of your way to make something unsafe, that's different. Luckily, that didn't happen a lot, but there was a lot of just, and Virgin's not exclusive in this arena, Scott. Every airline out there, I mean, there are stories that, of what some people will do on layovers. That's usually when things go astray, or things of that nature that it's just like, really, what are you thinking? So you have to just take them one as they come, none of the same. But you do what you can. And, whether I'm in a check airman capacity, I always my benchmark was I want to give the guy that I can't stand the best ride I can. And if I can't do that, I shouldn't be a check airman. And that if you're a chief pilot, you want to give the guy that you can't stand the best opportunity to save his job if you can. And if you can't do that, you shouldn't be a chief pilot. So that's probably the mindset, at least I have. Then if you're at a carrier that has a union on board, I still like to think that you have that philosophy. However, the contract will come into play, and it's kind of a clean cut, thou shalt not, and you did, nothing I can do for you. I don't think it has to be that way, but I think that's probably the way a lot of it will go.
I mean, it occurs to me, I think that there's still a fair amount of discretion, had with base chiefs and the union. Hey, that does remind me, there was something that it occurred to me, why our base chief pilots at Virgin were so much more operationally involved than what I perceive at other airlines that do things differently. So here's going to be my guess, and you tell me if you think that is the case. So to summarize for the listener here, there was this thing called the Flight Standards Board, and the Flight Standards Board was sort of the governing body on what if we're going to make any changes to the operating manual or whatnot, they all had to be approved by the Flight Standards Board. And the Flight Standards Board was typically one of the standards captains or all of them, but it was also the system chief and the base chief pilots, and I think maybe also the director of training or whatnot. And I'm guessing that it was the base chief pilots because in the genesis of Virgin America, all of the base chief pilots, or at least the first handful, there was you, then there was Brad, and I think Dancaster was at one time. You were all involved in the certification of the airlines. You were all intimately aware of the operational need or necessity of the policy that was there, and so therefore you could have a really good opinion of whether or not you're going to jettison a policy down the road. Is that why that was set up that way? Because nowadays, I don't believe that base chief pilots at airlines have any type of real like operating, decision making as far as like changing policies and changing flight standards manuals and stuff like that.
Yeah, no, I think it was just a product of the size of the airline at the time and manpower, So, you wore a lot of hats, right? And Rich Dancaster went from base chief to director of training, and I went to system chief, and those things all happened during the, we're certified by the FAA, but we're not certified by the DOT. Yeah. So a lot of things got blurred there, and that was just the part and parcel of that. So, I think as time went on, it got more regimented like it is at any airline. But in the early days, without a doubt, everybody was wearing multiple hats.
All right. So I think this might be the last question, and it's not really a Virgin question, but different airlines have got different cultures and policies of what management pilots do and where they come from and where they go back to. Like places like UPS, they were never UPS line pilots. They're hired from the outside to be the management pilots. I believe Spirit might operate in a similar culture, at least with certain personnel. But most other airlines do have the sort of culture that when pilots leave management, they just return back to the line. Maybe they're a check airman, maybe they're just a regular line pilot. What do you see as the pros and cons of that policy?
Yeah, I don't necessarily like keeping or bringing people in from the outside that don't have a stake in the whole deal, but for whatever vantage point that decision was made, I don't know, but just outside looking in, because I've never been at an airline that operated that way. It was always a pilot became that position, and I like that more because he's got a stake in the game, right? He's got to answer to the pilot group, and one day he may be going back, and maybe he won't be so welcome if he sold out that pilot group, right? And you see that every now and then, right? So I like that stake in the game aspect, as opposed to this guy can come in and just absolutely abandon the pilot group, and then maybe one day he'll pay for that, but damage is done and he'll just be gone. Yeah. And so pros and cons. So that's the way I kind of look at that.
Yeah. And the other thing I just sort of encourage the more zealous line pilots that might have negative opinions of various management pilots who they think maybe should have done better, is you can't just look at things that you didn't like that happened in a guy's term. You had to you also got to look at like, well, what good stuff was allowed and did happen under a guy's reign. Like I just think of our current situation. I know guys who have been through really hard times, like as they've been going through training and whatnot. And this company's really taking care of them. You know what I mean? And you got to remember that, like, all that's happened under the current leadership, whether or not you like that leadership for other reasons, just like, let's take it easy.
Yeah.
Welcome back to the pilot group, and it is what it is.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah.
Well, hey man, thanks a lot. Is there anything else you'd like to you'd like to talk about?
Nah, you covered a lot of ground there. I think like I said, Virgin was a great airline. It was bittersweet for sure. For I think everybody involved, right? Most of it, we had something we could totally be proud of, without a doubt. So mission accomplished there, and we fought like hell. So I mean that's I think that's the biggest thing I remember about Virgin, and always will, was the battle and the commitment by the frontline people that made the place. And sounds like a cliche, but the frontline people really made the airline.
Well, hey man, thanks for hiring me, and
thanks for coming.
And thanks for doing this. We'll get it out there in the not so distant future, man. I'll send you a copy before I put it out there. Okay.
Cool. Thanks for doing it, man. And I appreciate it. It's good to see you. We have a beer one of these days.
Definitely. And thank your wife for lending yourself to me for
I will. Do you hear that, honey?
All right, brother.
All right. Cheers, man. Bye.
Take care. If you've stuck around until now, thank you very much for listening. You can really help me out by sharing this with anyone, sharing it with a friend, sharing it on social media. I'd really appreciate that, and that's how you can best help me out. Thank you very much. Have a great day.